A little bit change in the hair. I got a bit of a darker root back, so this would blend a little bit better, and I think I like it just a wee bit better. But overall, not that bad. But let's talk about Lost in Translation. Specifically, different things in old myths and all this stuff, and how this, like, it's not even, like, I've talked before on my channel about people losing things because, you know, there's a power structure, like someone's limiting information or guiding you towards certain information, or destroying information of old pagan things or of a pagan way of living or something like this, or of a certain craft or whatever, because they wanted, like, the Christian overlords wanted everyone to be Christian. But besides that, there's even another thing that I was thinking of, and it came up when I posted on my Facebook page. There's this silly little meme going around saying, like, the origin of the word Cerberus actually goes all the way back to basically means spotted, so that the three-headed dog that guards the underworld is named Spot. And I thought that was kind of hilarious. I'm like, if that is true, that is some silly bullshit. But I kind of love it. And then someone commented down below saying, actually, that's kind of, it's up in the air. We don't really know, because if you trace the words back, depending on where the word really came from, it could mean, like, pit of hell, or it could mean, or pit of death, because hell would have been a thing, so, like, pit of death, or it would have meant, like, spotted. Like, it could be either or, depending on the origin of the word. And I thought this was so fascinating, because that in itself, I think, really wraps around the idea of sometimes things get lost in translation or switched or just a little bit different. My grandfather is from Baghdad, Iraq, and so there are a lot of things where he will say something or laugh when he's talking to some of his older relatives, and, like, we don't know freaking Armenian or Arabic at all, because no one decided to teach it to us. All the cousins don't know anything. And so he'll, like, be making jokes with, like, his brothers or his cousins or something. I'll be like, oh, what's so funny? Like, explain it to me. And he's like, it doesn't translate. And I'm like, no, but still tell me, like, maybe it will, like, tell me. And he's like, the camel is blah blah blah, in reference to the man in the thing. And you're like, huh? No, that doesn't translate. He goes, I told you, it just doesn't translate. And there's so many things, like, just like that I wonder about. Like, how many times is something just kind of switched in translation, just a little missed, just a little bit off? I mean, in English alone, you go all the way back to, like, the Germanic languages that then resurfaced and evolved and changed and done over time, and who knows how many things got shifted and switched, and, like, one word kind of sounded like another word in another language, so we put them together and that made sense, and it's like, we think that's what the meaning of it was, but actually it was the entire opposite or something totally different. Like, how many times do things get lost in translation, and how accurate can we even be? And I think about this a lot even too with, like, ancient Egyptian stuff. Like, all the hieroglyphs and all of that are really loose translations based on a couple of tablets that have been found, and that type of thing is very interesting too. Is, well, we hold something up as, like, this is the epitome of where this translation comes from, but it's only to our current knowledge of what was historical. It doesn't necessarily mean that that is what is true. And I think this is one of the reasons why, as much as I love diving into the actual history and the myth and the stories about my deities and finding out about them and going more and more and being like, oh, that story or this piece of history are mentioned here, there's some similarity here, this could have been picked up from this god, from this culture, and etc. and so forth, I still really rely a lot on my personal experiences with them, because of how much could have gotten lost in translation. As much as there is a community-based, historically, and then, like, in the pagan cult community of things, understanding it, this is how this is working. It's like, well, but what got not just changed, like, purposefully, like, not what was, like, changed to, like, convert the masses or whatever else. It's more of what just got misinterpreted, what got interpreted wrong, if even was wrong. Maybe just, like, a slight little discrepancy, because something as simple as spot or pit of death is two very different things, and yet it's all just based off of, well, it depends on where the origin of the word was. And suddenly you can look at this mythological creature into a totally different context. If you think of the guardian of the underworld being named Spot, well, one, he ain't an all-black dog probably anymore. He probably a Dalmatian-ish thing. And two, how threatening is that? Or how threatening originally was he? Or was he not as threatening before, whereas Pit of Death makes you kind of think, okay, Boyle was chomping at the bit from the beginning, like that was his name of the origin. Like those tell two very different multi-layered stories. And so I just find it so fascinating. And especially when it comes to different tellings of myth and how something so simple can be switched around. I think of Persephone's myth and like how she got with Hades, whether she was kidnapped or possibly went of her own free will, or you know, was tricked with the pomegranate or not, or the whole idea of a pomegranate possibly being a fruit of knowledge, so it was knowledge that allowed her to stay in the underworld for part of the year. And remind ourselves that these experts and this level of how things aren't necessarily the be-all end-all. A credible, quotable source isn't necessarily the be-all end-all truth that we thought it or hold it up to be. And it's important to question constantly, even the things we hold as fact. Because one minute it's a fact, and the next minute it's suddenly just a misinterpretation. So comment down below, have you guys looked into the translations or possibly like learning a little bit about the original languages that any of your deities come from, whether that be something more along the lines of Egyptian, interpreting the hieroglyphics, there we go. Or, you know, learning the ancient Greek versus Roman and Latin and how everything got translated. So all of that down below. Have you looked into that at all? Have you thought about something being lost in translation? Or are you kind of just like, yeah, whatever the textbook tells me, it tells me, and we'll go with that for now because too much complicated otherwise. Anyway, I make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.